Before the ring lights ever found him, Maurice Tillet looked like a man carved out of folklore, someone you might expect to stumble out of a medieval wood carrying both a book of verse and a battle axe. Long before promoters billed him as the French angel, strangers on the street would stop and stare, unsure whether they were witnessing a miracle of nature or a living cautionary tale. His massive jaw, swollen brow, and hauntingly expressive eyes made him unforgettable, but they were only the surface of a far more complex man. Beneath that imposing silhouette was a gentle, articulate man who spoke multiple languages, studied law, wrote poetry, and carried himself with the strange mix of dignity and melancholy that comes from understanding exactly how the world sees you. Tillet never asked for the kind of attention his body commanded, and yet it became the currency of his fame. In an era obsessed with spectacle, when wrestling was equal parts athleticism, carnival, and theater, he didn't just fit the part, he transcended it. Promoters looked at him and saw a monster. Fans saw a marvel of strength and strangeness. But the truth was always more complicated. Maurice Tillet existed in that rare space where beauty and tragedy blur together, where a man's real condition becomes his greatest performance, and where the line between character and human being is drawn, not by choice, but by circumstance. His story is not simply that of a wrestler with an unforgettable face. It is the story of a brilliant, gentle soul, trapped in a body that made him famous, feared, and forever misunderstood. Tillet lived a life shaped by myth, some that he perpetuated, others that were forced upon him, and in doing so, he became something wrestling had never seen before, a legend whose greatest power wasn't his strength, but the haunting grace with which he carried a life he never fully chose. Born on October 23, 1903, to French parents in the Ural Mountains of what is today Russia, Maurice Tillet earned the nickname Angel when he was a child due to his cherubic appearance. His father died when he was very young, leaving his mother, a teacher, to raise him on her own. When the Russian Revolution upended the country in 1917, Tillet's mother made the decision to move the two to France. The move proved to be beneficial for the two. His mother found work teaching at a local girls' college, and Maurice likewise learned to speak multiple languages. He was bright, curious, and unusually gentle, a boy who seemed more interested in understanding the world than fighting it. For a time, life settled into something calm, almost ordinary, and Maurice grew into a promising young man with ambitions far removed from the spotlight that would later define him. But adolescence brought with it the first hints of the condition that would reshape his destiny. Tillet began noticing subtle changes in his face and hands, bones thickening, features broadening. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with acromegaly, a rare disorder caused by a tumor on the pituitary gland. The disease didn't just alter his appearance, it altered the course of his life. Though he worried his appearance would hold him back, Tillet earned a law degree from the University of Toulouse. Still, he chose not to pursue a legal career, and instead joined the French Navy, serving for 5 years as an engineer. When his naval service ended, Maurice drifted through a handful of careers, searching for something that felt like a permanent home. He tried his hand at acting in small French films, where his unusual look drew interest, but never quite the roles he hoped for. He played rugby with surprising success, his size and strength turning him into a force on the field, but even that felt temporary. Everything changed in 1937 during a stop in Singapore, where Tillet met veteran wrestler Karl Pojello. Pojello saw in him not just physical power, but a kind of presence that couldn't be taught. He urged Maurice to consider wrestling, promising that the ring offered opportunities the rest of the world kept denying him. Intrigued and perhaps ready for reinvention, Maurice agreed. Maurice began wrestling across England and France, building confidence and momentum until World War II abruptly halted everything. Tillet and Pojello left Europe behind and crossed the Atlantic, headed to become wrestling stars in the United States. By 1940, Tillet's growing reputation reached the attention of Boston promoter Paul Bowser, a man who, in his era, operated with the same power and influence that Vince McMahon would wield generations later. Bowser immediately recognized Tillet's potential. With his imposing frame, mysterious aura, and unmistakable face, Tillet wasn't just another wrestler. He was a spectacle, something audiences couldn't ignore even if they wanted to. Under Bowser's direction, the French Angel became the most dominant attraction in the Northeast, his matches selling out arenas night after night. For 19 consecutive months, Tillet was unbeatable. Billed sometimes as the world's ugliest man, Tillet drew crowds as a main eventer who consistently won. In May of 1940, he captured the AWA World Heavyweight Championship, a title he held for more than 2 years with a kind of grim, relentless authority. In 1942, his momentum carried him north into Canada, where he won the World Heavyweight Championship in Montreal, cementing his status as a North American phenomenon. But success came with complications. As Tillet's fame grew, so did the number of imitators, other wrestlers adopting the Angel moniker and attempting to mimic his look, his mystique, even his mannerisms. The act that had once belonged solely to Maurice Tillet was being diluted, copied, and cheapened across the wrestling circuit. And while the copycats chipped away at his uniqueness, something far more serious was happening behind the scenes. Tillet's health was failing. Acromegaly, the condition that had transformed him into a larger-than-life figure, now threatened to undo him. By 1945, the disease had begun to slow him down. The man who once seemed invincible was suddenly wrestling against time as much as he was wrestling his opponents. His journey ultimately came to an end on Valentine's Day, 1953, in a match against the formidable English wrestler Bert Asirati. Tillet lost that night, and he knew it was time. After years of fighting crowds, imitators, illness, and his own body, Maurice Tillet stepped out of the ring for the last time. In his final years, Tillet remained close with the small circle of friends who had supported him throughout his career. One of them, a fellow wrestler and admirer of Maurice's legacy, asked if he might create molds of Tillet's head. Maurice agreed, understanding the strange yet meaningful gesture behind the request. The process required the same methods used for death masks, a somber foreshadowing that neither man spoke aloud. 3 casts were ultimately made. One found its way to the York Barbell Museum and USA Weightlifting Hall of Fame, where it became an object of fascination among strength historians. Another was donated to the Warren Anatomical Museum, preserving Tillet's unmistakable features for medical study. The final mask went to the Dan Gable International Wrestling Institute and Museum, a tribute to the sport he had given his life to. Only a few months after the molds were completed, tragedy struck. In 1954, Maurice Tillet suffered a fatal heart attack. The timing was cruelly symbolic. He had just learned that Karl Pojello, his mentor, his trainer, his closest friend, had died. Those who knew Maurice believed the news shattered him. Pojello had discovered him, guided him, opened doors no one else would have. He had even welcomed Maurice into his home. Their bond was not simply professional. It was family born from fate and hardship. Losing Karl meant losing the one person who had always understood him. Tillet was only 51 years old. Maurice Tillet's story might have quietly faded into wrestling history if not for an unexpected resurgence decades later. When Shrek premiered in 2001, audiences instantly connected the lovable green ogre to a real person. They just didn't know his name yet. Before long, side-by-side comparisons of Tillet and the animated character began circulating, with fans pointing out the unmistakable likeness. DreamWorks has never officially acknowledged Tillet as the model for Shrek, but the resemblance is striking enough that the idea has taken on a life of its own. Tillet's connection to Shrek goes beyond mere physical resemblance. During his wrestling career, he was frequently judged, and even feared, because of his appearance. Wrestling cards labeled him as the ugliest man in the world, leading many to assume that the surprisingly gentle and intelligent Maurice was actually a monstrous figure. In an ironic twist, that story mirrors the premise of Shrek itself. An outsider misunderstood by the world, feared for his looks, but far kinder than anyone expects. Whether coincidence or not, the parallels only deepen the intrigue surrounding Tillet's enduring legacy. Maurice Tillet's life was a study in contrasts. Brilliant yet judged, gentle yet feared, a man whose appearance shaped the story the world told about him. In the wrestling ring, he became a legend, a figure larger than life. Yet it was his humanity, the intelligence, the kindness, the perseverance that continues to resonate today. Decades after his death, the striking resemblance to Shrek has ensured that Tillet's memory reaches audiences far beyond the wrestling world, transforming him into an unlikely pop culture icon. Perhaps the greatest tribute to Maurice Tillet is that, like the ogre he may have inspired, he reminds us not to judge by appearances, to look deeper, and to celebrate the extraordinary life that can exist behind an unforgettable face.